And I can remember so many questions happening about this a couple of years ago. What is a 20-minute neighbourhood? And quite an obsession about the number rather than that word neighbourhood. And I think it's just important to highlight as we set out now looking at new approaches that that's what it's about people living locally and being able to walk and get to their daily needs in order to enable their own well-being and the well-being of the planet as well. But the 20-minute neighbourhood aspect of it, that reference, I have to admit, I still like, because it's what has grabbed the attention across the world and particularly for ourselves here today in Scotland. Right back from that first programme for government, where in the introduction to it, Nicola Sturgeon referred to 20-minute neighbourhoods and the kind of local living that we were all doing as a result of COVID. So I think referring to it in the way that we are is useful because we have, as planners, been working on this for years, but this has really brought it to the fore for us. So for myself, I do keep referring to it as 20-minute/local living, but it really is, and I know who Sam is fully in agreement with this, it's neighbourhood living, and it's how we create that and make that happen across our country. So today what I want to cover is a little bit around the work that we've been doing within the Improvement Service in Public Health Scotland with a range of other organisations in the lead up to the National Planning Framework. We knew that we had that 20-minute living and that local living concept coming through for us when the National Planning Framework would come online. So we were beginning years back to actually think about this and think about how we pull together around that. So I want to just spend a little bit of time looking at the features and the concepts that underlie what creates a 20-minute neighbourhood and the development of Scotland's place and wellbeing outcomes, which came together as a result of the change in emphasis in the lead up to the National Planning Framework at the same time as having a whole review around the urgency in our country about health inequalities and the urgency about the climate crisis as well. It was a set of place and wellbeing outcomes, and I would hope many of you have heard of them already, and it's certainly something that our work has been anchored in, as has the work of those different organisations that were on the screen before. They're what every place needs to enable well-being of people and planet, to deliver net zero emissions, to be more sustainable, and to enable greater equality, not just in health, but in social and economic environments as well. So moving those forward, what they actually do in delivering those outcomes and delivering for the well-being of people and planet is they really impact on our behaviour change. And very much that's what local living is about, that we're creating a place that from the minute people step out the door, they're behaving differently. We're not telling them to behave differently or asking them, they're actually just automatically making different choices because of the neighbourhood that they're living in. And it's about that creation of that and our different approaches to help that creation that we're here to discuss today. So when it comes to the place and wellbeing outcomes, having sat and shaped these from a whole lot of different approaches across the world and pulling these together for what actually worked within Scotland, we mapped them across to what was happening at the same time around 20-minute and local living neighbourhoods to find that if you deliver all of these features in the place and wellbeing outcomes, you're delivering a 20-minute local living neighbourhood as well. So with that in mind, I'll run very, very quickly through what the themes are of these rather than the detail. At the very end of this presentation, there'll be links to our website that gives a full amount of detail in the background to these and their content. But they cover the kinds of areas that are already in the Place Standard tool. It's the same evidence that shaped them. And they run through how we move around in our areas and that everyone has access to good active travel, to public transport and to roads and streets that aren't dominated by cars, but that are there for the use of us walking and wheeling and cycling and so on. They go through the same themes around spaces, that we all have streets and spaces that encourage us to stop and to use them and to walk. We have natural space and we all have access to good quality spaces, and we all have access to play and recreation that suits our varying needs throughout our ages, not just for children. Civic space is and a further important aspect, that we are able to have a sense of belonging. We have buildings around us that enhance our feeling of belonging to a place and our history, and that we feel safe as we move through them. We are looking at how we're looking after our spaces, the care and the maintenance of them. And we are also looking at our sense of control. How much are we engaged in those places as the people that live there? And we're also looking at resources. So this is very much what can come in and be seen as being purely the local living aspect, our proximity to services and amenities, our ability to get good quality housing that's affordable and a range of housing, and our access to good quality fair work as well. But they are all there if we're delivering on that local living aspect and doing that in order to be enhancing people and planet as well. So with those outcomes in mind and thinking about them as they are taking a place-based approach, if you're seeking to deliver those outcomes, then you are taking a place-based approach. I do frequently get asked, well, what is an example of the kinds of decisions that we're making where we're not perhaps thinking about the impact that we're having on delivering that kind of place and those sorts of outcomes. So just one very short example of the decisions that we make, and these are ones that are made beyond planning, not by a planning authority at all, but certainly can be made within a council, is where we're locating buildings even within a place. So this one short example shows where you have a home, a trip across the top there to a school, a parent dropping their child off, picking up shopping, dropping in an elderly neighbour, and then going off to work. When we make a decision to move that school for the very best of intentions, we move it to a greenfield site where we can quickly rebuild a far more sustainable school that can have better services and amenities for the children attending it. The change in behaviour is the thing that can be the unintended consequence we're not thinking of if we're creating local living 20-minute neighbourhoods. That parent then has to make a choice between not being able to do all of those things, but getting their child to school and then potentially having to go straight to work, cutting out the local shopping, the local business support, cutting out the support to an elderly neighbour that helps them to age in place. Or if that elderly neighbour is actually an elderly relative who they are taking care of, then they can't get to that additional job that is keeping them out of poverty. So that overall impact on all of those aspects about our well-being, our planet and inequality can be an unintended consequence of what we're doing when we're thinking and shaping our places and making decisions with the best of intentions. And that just lists there the kind of impacts that we can have where we keep things local. We can be having a positive impact. Where we keep them and don't have them as local, then we aren't helping ourselves to deliver on our bigger ambitions across Scotland. So how do we actually get this into our decision-making processes then? How do we look at every decision that we are making and make sure that it's not having that kind of unintended consequence on our place? In the Improvement Service and working with Public Health Scotland, we began by using those place and wellbeing outcomes to begin to assess documents that were coming out, decision-making process documents, such as the Local Development Plan for Edinburgh. We also looked at a master plan area for a new school campus in Ardrossan, and we looked at a regional strategy with the indicative regional strategy for Argyll and Bute. So deliberately looking at 3 different scales to consider how they were having an impact on place and had they actually maximised the positive impact they could have on delivering a local place and a 20-minute neighbourhood. In each of those assessments, we ran through the different plans, assessing how it impacted on the place, sitting with a range of perspectives of people in the room beyond the pure policy writers, different areas of the council, different expertise, folks with a public health background, a climate background, and got them themselves to identify where are the issues here and where this plan perhaps isn't thinking about some of the unintended consequences and making recommendations back on what could change in order to deliver a better local living place as well. The example of when we looked at the Edinburgh Local Development Plan back in 2020 looked at the different scenarios that it was considering at the time. The more traditional scenario it had been developing for many years, including while I worked on that local development plan. And we ran it through a test of more of a 20-minute neighbourhood approach to it. And you can see there the kind of traditional low density, semi-detached housing and not having a critical mass that particularly supports businesses and an orientation around the car, but looked also at the other option of higher density, mixed use, emphasis on brownfield, a critical mass that could then support local businesses, local bus services and local shops, and a reduction in car mileage to meet with the route map that Scottish Government and COSLA have set for us to reduce the car kilometre by 20% by 2030. So what we found in looking at the plan was that as an approach, we were delivering far more if we looked to include policy around that list on the right-hand side there. We also found that there were crucial elements that came through to guide the next plan around the importance of density, having infrastructure in first, looking at housing types and sizes that enabled a proper mix and a community cohesion rather than all families and nothing for that kind of mix for people to age in the same area, and allowed local businesses and local bus services to thrive because of the density at which they were building. So that was something that at that point we reported back to City of Edinburgh and to all of the different councils that we did those pilot scopings in. And it was what led on to then the Shaping Places for Wellbeing programme, where we're looking again at the wellbeing of people and planet and working more locally and totally grounded in those place and wellbeing outcomes.